concerning coin collection that is taking place right behind us. Thanks to this little optimization, we actually managed to finish the race as... we just got killed on the finish line. Anyway, half an hour later, we actually managed to clear this stage, finishing as 8. Awesome. Let's take a look at a couple of other interesting stages. Let's take Crown City. Here, we are confronted with a seemingly impenetrable question block wall early on. Luckily for us, there is a little trick possible that allows us to skip a seemingly impossible obstacle. You see, if we decide not to take a turn, but instead crash our little cart at a very steep angle right at the very edge of the wall into the trash cans, then the nice little Lakitu takes pity on us and decides to help us out by placing us right behind the question blocks that were blocking the road. That's a neat little trick called the Lakitu lift that will actually come in handy a couple of times. The next question blocks causing us trouble here are the ones blocking the flight path. Luckily for us, it is actually possible to skip them. All that we have to do here is to jump off the road to the left and to drive on the wall. This little optimization actually perfectly sets us up for the next section, allowing us to build a ton of speed. Thanks to those little tricks, we actually managed to reach the end completely broke as 6th. Hooray! We're actually making really good progress so far. Sadly, our progress is about to hit the brakes and to come to a sudden stop. Because the next stage we're going to take a look at is the Mario Bros. Circuit. The Mario Bros. Circuit is a huge problem. It isn't ambushing coins that are causing us the problems, nor are it sudden golden explosions. For the first time, the question blocks reveal their ugly true character. Here's the culprit. It's this question block blockade that is blocking us. This question block blockade is just placed in a really unusual question block blockade layout, unquestionably blocking us. The problem is the following. For whatever reason, Nintendo decided to extend these question blocks out a little bit further to the edge of the road than they usually do. Normally, there's just enough space besides the question block blockade to barely make it past them. But not here. To make matters even worse, we can't use a Lakitu lift to skip those blocks. I drove poor little baby Luigi over this cliff more often than I can count, but sadly, not a single one of my attempts was able to convince the otherwise so useful little Lakitu to be a little bit useful. He always places us right in front of the dumb blockade again. So, if we can't drive besides it, and if we can't Lakitu skip it, then this raises the question of how to skip the question block blockade then. And the answer is, sadly, we don't. It's sadly game over here. There is nothing we can do. Those question blocks are sadly, obviously unskippable. Those dumb question blocks just outsmarted us. We are sadly forced to pick up an item here. So let's pull out the OCO, WMKW, CBBW, CAWQB and increase our unavoidable question block counter. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. We have to grab one devastating item here every single lap. It just is what it is. So I'm going to be honest with all of you wonderful people for a second. I can't tell you how much those 3 question blocks annoy me. It's just, we're such a good track and those blocks here, they just embarrassed us so easily. They don't ambush us. They don't explode into existence right in front of us. They don't even really have a strategy. They're just sitting there, laughing about our failure, mocking us with their disgusting jingle. This terrible anthem of failure and shame. And sadly, those question blocks aren't the last problem we face, because the next stage is the Airship Fortress. And the Airship Fortress already features the next problematic problem. Here it is. There are 2 item box walls in this level that are difficult to avoid. First the ones in the turn in the tunnel, and later these little troublemakers, directly after the flight section. So here's the good news. It is possible to avoid both of those boxes. The bad news, well, avoiding them is terribly slow. We have to drive so incredibly dumb. The best strategy that I was able to come up with to make it past these item boxes reliably is to deliberately bonk poor baby Luigi into the wall right before them, slowing us down and allowing us to somehow safely drive past. However, this strategy is incredibly slow. We pretty much have to completely slow down twice per lap, which is just too slow to make it even close to the top 10. We have to figure out a way to become faster. And thus, I spend an unreasonable amount of time here trying to optimize this nightmare of an airship for coin and item display. Here's what I was able to come up with. First, at the beginning of the race, we try to get on a rail as fast as possible. This is mainly to get away from all the other dedicated coin card crackers, because as their name suggests, they tend to explode into coins without a word of warning. We grind the rail until this spot, jump off and switch the rail here to pick up some speed, which brings us into a perfect position right before the tunnel. And this is where things become fun. You see, as it turns out, we actually don't have to bonk into the wall here. We actually can drive on top of it instead. We can just hop onto the wall when reaching the turn. So if you're wondering how vertically driving up a wall is ever going to be faster than bonking, well then I have news for you. Because as it turns out, there is a little technique possible in Mario Kart World that I'd like to call rocketing. So what is rocketing, I hear you ask? Well, the thing is the following. If we jump while wall riding, we jump off of the wall with a boost. If we're doing this in a turn, however, then jumping off just means that we immediately reconnect with the wall, allowing us to perform another wall jump off of it, and another one, and another one, and so on. And the result is, well, the result is us going whee! We take off the ground like a rocket and boost ourselves around the turn until we land with a boost on the ground, which is like the coolest thing ever. I love this little trick so much. Finally, the question blocks in the second tunnel. As it turns out, the gap there is big enough that we can actually drift right through, which brings us into a perfect position to grind into the long turn leading downwards. At the very end, we can jump onto the rail to once again get away from all the coimplosions, and if we do every optimization we just discussed perfectly, then hooray! We actually managed to win this race. That felt really good. At this point, I was slowly getting new hope. You know, even if we're forced to pick up a dumb item box every once in a while, like in a Mario Bros. Circuit, this journey is still worth it. Maybe it is not possible to fulfill my dream of finishing within the top 10 of every Mario Kart race while racing against a hard AI in 150cc without picking up a single coin or touching a single question block, but if our attempt of trying to finish within the top 10 of every Mario Kart World race while racing against a hard AI in 150cc mode without picking up a single coin or touching a single question block allows us to learn about cool Mario Kart tech like rocketing and forces us to look at the stages through a unique lens, revealing interesting routes that we otherwise would have never considered, then this journey is still worth completing. Winning the race in the Airship Fortress really energized me. I was driving better than ever before. The Boo Cinema was next and I was pretty easily able to get 9th place in it. Scratch another one off of the list. Off we are to the Starview Peak, one of my least favorite stages. The whole stage just looks as if someone forgot to put in the Technicolor before recording the Rainbow Road. It's just so bland. But luckily we don't have to spend much time here either, because after only a couple of attempts we already managed to finish 4th here. Hooray! Fortunately for us, the next stage on the chopping block is much better. DK Spaceport, my favorite stage in the game. In my humble opinion, they really nailed the feeling of being within the DK arcade game here. The most challenging part here is taking all the turns, because there are always a bunch of item boxes stubbornly blocking our path right in front of them. Luckily, all of those can be all grinded around in some form or another, which allows us to finish this stage as 7th. Next stop, the Cheep Cheep Falls. The Cheep Cheep Falls are a tough little cookie. First, there is this section where we have to skip question blocks by wall riding on the side in such a way that we afterwards immediately make it onto a railing. Afterwards, there is a long section leading into a wall jump where we can't really get away from the other 23 coin cards, making us especially susceptible to random coimplosions, before we take the mushroom boost shortcut without the mushroom, which loses surprisingly little time. It didn't take terribly long, and we are already reaching the finish line, before a toad right in front of us spits out a coin right in our face. Half an hour later, we pull off an actual 7th place finish. Hooray! Sky High Sunday is next. Another really great stage. There is just so much of rail madness and trick jumpery possible here. It's great. In the beginning, we skip a nasty coin on a rail here with a really tricky jump to get a bit more speed. Shortly afterwards, we take this little optimization to avoid the other racers before skipping a question block wall by doing a fun little wall ride. It's a really cool stage, and thanks to how many routes there are, it's not too hard to pull off coin and itemless. And with this, we are already getting close to the finish. There are only 5 more stages left that we have to take a look at. 5 stages standing between us and the actual finish line of our little challenge. Sadly, those 5 stages all confront us with one problem or another. So first, the Choco Choco Mountain. Here's a fun fact. This little challenge that we're currently attempting is actually not the first thing that I wanted to attempt. The very first thing I tried was to check whether it is possible to beat Mario Kart World while only driving backwards. And I very quickly came to a conclusion. Nopesy dopesy. So why do I think that it is impossible to beat any stage in Mario Kart World while driving backwards, I hear you ask? Well, because of the little Lakitu who is watching over us. As soon as we try to drive backwards on a course, the little Lakitu pulls out his card fishing rod and turns us back straight again. Which raises a question, doesn't it? Why would the little innocent Lakitu ever do something like this? Why doesn't he allow us to drive backwards for a little? Any answer? Well, as it turns out, the little innocent Lakitu might actually be not as innocent as he wants us to believe. Because in truth, the little Lakitu is actually a snitching tattletale who is spying on us in secret. The little Lakitu is secretly working for Nintendo, following us on every step we take, trying to make sure that we don't accidentally end up having fun in the wrong way. He's basically the fun police, parentally watching over us with a sharp eye, making sure we don't ruin our own experience by enjoying the game in an unintended way. And on the Choco Mountain, the little Lakitu was actually so lovingly protecting me that I would have loved to return the kindness by kindly gifting him a blue shell right up his silly cloud. But to understand what was causing my desire to commit Lakitu homicide, we first have to talk about the Choco Mountain. I hate the Choco Mountain. The problem is not necessarily the mountain, neither is it the chocolate. The problem are once again filthy coins. It's this section here. This section for which I'd like to coin the name the Devilish Enrichment Driveway. What's the problem with the Devilish Enrichment Driveway? Well, it's pretty devilishly tricky to drive our way through without accidentally becoming very, very rich. So first, the natural coin layout here already makes it very difficult to drive through this spot, but that's not the main problem. The main problem is that the AI is just so unbelievably likely to use coin items here, it is absurd. I honestly suspect that there is a system in place that manipulates which items the AI drivers get at which point in the stage because this stuff isn't normal. There are almost always literally billions of coins lying on the ground here. To make matters even worse, the turn is really tight, meaning there is barely any space to avoid the dangerous fortunes lying around. Finally, the turn is also alongside a mountain. Because of this, we can't see very far ahead, which means we have very little reaction time to avoid the collective coin orgy that is going on the road. It's honestly a nightmare. I just wasn't able to find a consistent way to drive through this madness. We need to figure out a way to skip this devilish enrichment driveway. And this is where the little loving Lakitu comes back into the picture. Because would you believe it? The relief! As it turns out, there is actually a railway hidden a bit besides the enrichment driveway that conveniently skips the entire thing and loops back into the main stage. We may actually manage to stay broke. The only problem, the little Lakitu's fun-detected antenna just started to blink violently as soon as we drove onto this rail. So violently, as a matter of fact, that he simply has no other choice than to save us from our own self-inflicted accidental fun, conveniently placing us straight back into the wealth grinder. Just think about this for a second. They actually went through the trouble of creating an alternative route through the stage, and then they programmed the Lakitu so strict that he doesn't allow us to drive on top of a perfectly normal route that they actually created. As you know, an intended route. There are tons of such examples all over the game. I hate it. Nintendo just way overtuned the Lakitu. They crafted this huge Mario Kart with this insane open world. Everything about the game is about exploration, and then they put in the most aggressive Lakitu in the history of this series. It's so weird. But even worse, we still have to figure out a way to survive this spot. So here's what I ended up doing. I decided just to drive through the grass here. I just said screw it, if the Lakitu doesn't allow me to drive on an actual piece of the stage, then I'll drive besides the road. Great job Lakitu at making me play the game in the intended way, by the way. Great done, well job. It took a lot of optimization in other parts of the stage to still be fast enough, but after lots of tries, I finally managed to somehow finish 10th. Hooray! Only 4 problems remain. And luckily for us, we can immediately remove another one of those problematic problems. I decided to wait till the end of this challenge before checking out Bowser's castle, because the whole place appeared so intimidating, but as it turns out, beating it coin and itemless is actually surprisingly simple. All we got to do is to take the shortcut on top of the castle to once again avoid all the explosive driving coins below, take the shortcut on the sign because I like it, race carefully on the boosted part and hit the air boost pad in a bit of a weird angle to avoid a nasty item block, and hooray! We finish as 6th. On we go. Next up, Toad's Terrible Factory. This here is footage of the Super Mario 64 run that was performed during the Summer Games Done Quick 2021. Summer Games Done Quick being one of the biggest annual events in speedrunning. And I know what at least one of you is currently thinking. Hold on, Steve, this doesn't look right. I've seen Mario 64 speedruns before, and this gameplay looks much slower. And you're obviously correct, smart rhetorical viewer, because there is indeed something strange going on with this gameplay. Because Babzia, the person who's playing the game here, is actually playing it blindfolded. Babzia beat the game without seeing anything. An unbelievable achievement. How is something like this even possible? And the answer is, well, it's 3 things. First, it's godlike gaming skills, obviously. Second, it's tons of clever routing and insane memorization. And third, because of muscle memory. The more often we repeat a certain sequence of motions, like inputs on a controller, the better adjusted our body becomes to performing this motion, until we are eventually capable of performing it perfectly every time as soon as we get a certain stimulus, like for example a sound, even if we aren't seeing the game. Muscle memory is what allows us to become incredibly good at certain tasks in games. It is what allows speedrunners to consistently get difficult glitches, or what allows incredible players in fighting games to pull off crazy combos. Muscle memory is pretty much the backbone upon which many incredible gaming achievements are built upon. So why are we talking about muscle memory? Well, the thing is the following. Whenever I encounter an especially nasty coin in a game, or try to defeat an especially evil slope while routing a challenge run, muscle memory always has me covered eventually. You know, no matter how difficult the gaming challenge might be, as long as we just keep throwing ourselves at the challenge over and over again, we will eventually develop the muscle memory that allows us to overcome it. And this is where our old arch enemy enters the picture once again. The coins. You see, the problem is that the random coin explosions and the ongoing random artillery coin strikes have the side effect that every time we drive on a stage, different areas are coinishly intoxicated and impossible for us to pass. And this means we just can't rely on muscle memory. We can't learn a specific route through a stage and repeat it so often until we can even perform it with our eyes closed, because every single time we start a race, the obstacles are different. We can't rely on skills built up via muscle memory. We have to build up the skill to be instinctively and reactively good at the game, which is a much more difficult task. And the Toad Factory is the stage that challenges our reactive skills by far the most. The problem isn't a specific thing, it's everything. The stage starts with quite a tricky trick jump. We have to jump off of this pillar here to dodge the first question block barricade, which is surprisingly awkward to do. Next up is a long corridor in which some kind of explosive coin carnage is going on most of the time, followed by a simple turn. And then we are in the harbor. And the harbor is terrible. Here, question blocks and coins are being moved on conveyor belts, which randomizes their positions every time we arrive here. To make matters even worse, the bridge at the beginning is always in a different spot, which prevents us from coming up with a consistent wall riding strategy. And all of this happens before the biggest problem. All of this happens before the double turn of death. So why is it called the double turn of death? Well, because it's 2 turns in a row, directly after everyone at their Piranha plant got a new item to vomit out coins, which means there are coins exploding out of almost every driver here. I really can't overstate how deadly the double turn of death is. No other place in the entire game killed me as often as this